And a very warm welcome to the first Digital Brew of 2020. We've had a little bit of a lull, but I'm pleased to be here today with Jason Heller of Huggle, mighty first of the first ever branded Digital Brew mugs. And we're talking about retail in the 2020s. Jason, you've got a really interesting background and career, so perhaps you could start by just giving us a quick history of your life.
Sure. My background, my career has always been in retail.
Yep.
I spent 18 or 19 odd years working for various businesses of different sizes.
Yep.
From Arcadia, House of Fraser, through to Tesco. I moved out to Canada for a few years to work for a wonderful business out there called Holt Renfrew. Okay. And then I've worked for smaller retail businesses like Thomas Pink, which is part of LVMH. But always in buying roles, and predominantly in menswear buying roles. Okay. But slightly unusual in the sense that I've worked at both the luxury end of the market and also at I've kind of got down and dirty at the value end. So a little bit unusual for a lot of buyers because you normally specialise in a certain area.
Yeah.
We moved back from Canada about 12 years ago now when my daughter was born.
Yeah.
And Rachel and myself decided that we'd had enough of the corporate world.
Yeah, take the plunge.
We thought we'd take the plunge. We thought life wasn't stressful enough, and we thought, given that we'd been introduced to some wonderful people when we were living in North America that had a similar business, we were really surprised to see that there weren't any businesses like that in the UK.
Yeah. And give us a sort of snapshot. So tell us about Huggle.
Yeah, well, Huggle caters for what's called the mother and baby market, mother and baby sector. Really, we sell what we consider to be some of the best products in the market. Yep. Some of the brands we work with on an exclusive basis. So we're their only retailer in the UK and Europe. Yep. Others, we're one of a handful of their hand-picked retailers, so we might be one of 5 or 10 retailers in the UK. Yeah. And then some of the other brands that we work with, we consider best in class, and you'd expect to see them in any good nursery retail store. And we have a store, a 4,000 square foot store in northwest London,
where we are today.
Yeah,
excellent.
And we run kids classes. Yeah. So we run things like Mandarin for kids. We do baby ballet. Yeah. We run lots of music and dance classes, but all interactive.
I'd like to come back to that actually, because talking about kind of building communities and challenges would be an interesting thing to look at. I think you described yourself as the modern baby store. That's your kind of page title on your website.
Yes.
I quite like that.
Yes.
And that's a good place to start. I don't want to start on a negative, but there's a lot in the sort of press and sort of trade commentary and sort of reviewing 2019, saying it's been the hardest and toughest year for retail in 25 years. We've had Mothercare shutting down 79 stores. So I think, again, without being negative, it'd be interesting. I guess there's 2 questions in there. One is, what is the real kind of backdrop to the challenging conditions for retail overall? And the second question is, given the parallels, obviously, with Mothercare, I think it's really interesting to speak about Huggle and, what are you doing differently and what's the kind of root cause of their problems?
Well, I think it's been very well documented as to how much the retail market has changed and the speed of change as well, which has been really challenging for a lot of businesses. Yep. Mothercare, along with a number of other retail businesses that were founded in the 20th century, were designed and conceived as a 20th century business. Yep. And their challenge, and particularly Mothercare, because they had a number of legacy issues, their challenge as we moved into the 21st century was really how they turned that business on its head to cater for not just changing demographics and a changing customer base, but also where they had a big footprint, a large number of stores, how they managed to match those increasing costs with what was needed to be a lot more nimble and really address those issues.
Yeah, is sort of rates and rent, is that a common problem for all retailers? I mean, you read a lot about even some of the really massive retailers having to renegotiate on their terms with their landlords just to keep going. I mean, So, why has that happened recently rather than before?
Well, again, I think it's, unfortunately part of the challenge that retailers have is most retailers sign up to 5, 10, 15-year leases, and they tend to all be upward only leases, which mean that the rents,
landlords,
yes, the joys of.
Yeah.
And when you combine that with ever increasing business rates, for example, the business rates on this site, we had a review about 3 years ago, and our rates went up 75%, and that's a huge challenge, massively.
With no real right to sort of question it or query it.
Well, interestingly enough, we actually challenged them, and they came back and actually put them up further. So lesson learned, I think.
Yeah, don't challenge that one. Yeah.
But it's a challenge, and you've got rising costs, for your properties. You've got increasing wages. And you combine that with the increase in expectation from consumers. It's a really big challenge.
Difficult, and I think, again, a lot of commentary around mother carers, their sort of relative failure to truly embrace the digital space and kind of online. Do you think that's a fair accusation?
I think that's a little bit harsh because I think they did invest an awful lot of money.
Yeah, I think it's the fastest growing channel. That's not uncommon, admittedly, but I think I can't remember the name of the person who's sort of heading up. They seem to have turned that corner, which is why I think I'm surprised that they did end up shutting all the stores. So
they had a gentleman called Mark Newton-Jones that went in there latterly to change things, but prior to that, they had a couple of really, really sharp, really good digital executives in there that really changed the focus in the business. Yeah. But when you've got 180, if you include early learning centre, almost 300 stores. Yeah. That you're paying rent, rates, salaries on. And, in reality, you don't really need more than maybe 50 stores to cover the country and a really good online presence. You can understand why those legacy issues that they had became such a problem for them.
And I think I see Huggle very much as a clicks and mortar business. And you've got the fantastic store. I mean, my children are a bit older, but I remember when I was in the kind of the baby buying phase, there's no substitute for touching stuff, feeling it, feeling the weight, does it feel well put together, etc., etc. How? I mean, maybe this is very specific to your particular audience, but how do you see online and offline complementing each other? I mean, do you have a strategy in terms of how to use them both, or do they generally operate in sort of isolation? It's more of a geography of who's nearby, for example. Yeah,
historically they have operated separately. We're trying very hard to bring them back together because at the moment that customers don't really see a difference. They want to be able to shop across different channels at a time that's convenient for them, and that can be quite a challenge for retailers. We have a new website that launches in the next few weeks, but that's a big investment, especially for a business our size, and it's a huge challenge for bigger retailers than us. So the difficulty is when you shop online, what you actually want for an online purchase generally is a good price, at speed of delivery. And for us, particularly in store, when our store is all about the experience, all about building that emotional relationship and bond with the customer, it's very hard to replicate that.
Yes, it is a challenge. And I think, that investment in online, did you have any sort of measurement around the website driving footfall into store? And is that a specific objective of that site, or is it more of a longer distance selling kind of mechanic? So you can have a bigger audience and a bigger revenue ultimately from selling to people who wouldn't otherwise be able to come into the store.
Well, the whole online in-store sphere is changing so quickly, and historically. In-store was your point of distribution, and online was really where you did a lot of your research. But actually, what's happening now is in-stores really where you have an opportunity to build that emotional connection with the customer, and in-stores really becoming kind of the new form of media because we are able to really showcase brands. In a way that perhaps you can't do online.
I think experiential marketing is definitely a thing. I think being able to give people experiences which you can't do online, really. I mean, how much you'd like to claim you can, it's almost impossible to. And again, community, which I would like to come back to. that we're all human. I think we all respond well to humans, and it's a real challenge to do that remotely, I think.
There's a lot of technology coming to market. There's a lot of companies that are trying to bridge that gap, and it's really interesting what's happening, particularly with the introduction of artificial intelligence and different technologies that can help. The challenge for businesses like us is the cost of that.
Yeah, and selecting which ones really help rather than sort of slight snake oil.
Exactly.
Promising, under-delivering cliche, but unfortunately that does happen. And how, we can't really talk about retail without mentioning kind of Black Friday. What's your view on that? Did you loathe it beyond anything, or is it an opportunity? I mean, how do you see that?
Where to begin? It's a double-edged sword, because when Black Friday first came over from the States, it was seen as an extra selling period, and the promotional activity was predominantly online. As online and e-commerce has changed and expectations from consumers have changed, it now has to be mirrored in store from a price and promotional strategy point of view. The challenge for us is how you protect your margin during those periods, and you have to be a very good brand or a very brave retailer not to get involved in those promotional periods.
Although this year in particular, I saw there's the whole Keep Friday Green sort of mission, which I really like actually. Let's not have a race to the bottom. Let's concentrate on good values, good service, good products at a fair price. And I think it's difficult to avoid a sense of sort of a race to the bottom when everything is just price driven. And I've got personal experience with this working, and I'm big kind of windsurfer and kitesurfer, and I used to work at our local shop, and to this day, they're doing really well because their service is brilliant and their advice is excellent, and I'm sure you're the same. Physically having products which you can go and talk to someone who genuinely understands the difference between particular buggies, for example. These are considerations you should take into account. Where do you live? Do you need to get it in the car? Think about width, think about weight, all the kind of things which a good salesperson will have that discussion and sort of naturally guide you to a decision which you may have already made, having done the research. But it's nice to have a human sort of validate that thing. So this shop and your shop doing well because of that top tier service. However, I'm sure you still have people coming in, using and abusing you for the touchy feely bit, and then they go and buy it as cheap as they can. Which is there a solution to that?
I don't think so. I think you're always going to have a percentage of your customers that appreciate the work you put in and your team put in and will be loyal. But you're also going to have
small premium for that.
Well, interestingly enough, because of the way the markets are changing, our prices in store and online are exactly the same, and they're pretty competitive. I wouldn't ever say that we're the cheapest out there, but we're certainly not the most expensive. And I don't think you can be these days because people shop with their phones in their hands, and they have that access to information so quickly.
Do you see people in store picking up a product, liking it, and then literally Googling it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think, regardless of how affluent or careful you are with money, it is the way that people shop these days, and you have to accept that. And the information available to consumers is all consuming because it's immediate. And you need to work really hard to make sure, we need to work really hard to make sure that we stay competitive price-wise.
Definitely. And what's your view on sort of discount codes, voucher codes? Is that something you do, or do you avoid it?
It is something we offer at various points in the year. We have to. I don't think there's any escaping from it. And it becomes a challenge, particularly with some of the brands that we work with here, because they don't want you promoting their product out of season. But the harsh reality is, if you have a competitor that's driving traffic either to their store or online, you have to be nimble enough to be able to offer that.
And there's an argument that they can actually help conversion rates. Because people would just be nudged over that line because they think, there's a voucher which appears to run out quite soon, whether it doesn't, it's irrelevant. But it's not all bad. And I think the reality is we've always had sort of Boxing Day sales, and I think people have waited for an event, and that's sort of, I think, the kind of Cyber Mondays, Black Fridays, I think they're not actually incredibly new, but the kind of frenzied nature of them seems to be different, I think. And it's and I suppose from sort of myself as a consumer, we do wait sometimes to for that period to come in, but maybe we always have done. Maybe that's actually not as different as we like to think it is, and you know, some of the kind of razzmatazz. And I do sense there's a slight trend of anti-Black Friday.
There's definitely a feeling around that. I think there is definitely a pushback.
Yeah.
How that plays out over the next couple of years, I don't know.
Yeah.
The Black Friday just passed was a challenge for a lot of retailers because it fell so late.
Yes.
So it almost knocked into that Christmas trading period, which was difficult for a lot of people. So you found yourself, and we certainly did here, you either find yourself kind of holding fire at the risk of losing that trade, or getting involved in that frenzy, and that's a challenge.
Margin massacre.
It is.
I know.
It is.
But then volume, I suppose, if you've got the stock and you've got, as long as the margin is still there, then you know volume obviously is a good thing, and you can get more customer base, and hopefully they come back, etc., etc., etc. Talk us through some of the things you do. Having the physical presence, and I know you're very good at this, and you can allude to it. To some of the initiatives to sort of build community within store. So the experiential stuff that you know it's much harder to do online.
Yeah, well, here we run a number of classes in store.
Yep.
And we have an on-site cafe.
Yep.
The classes are not just parent-child interactive classes, but we also have antenatal classes. We do first aid for parents. And really, when we started business about 9 or 10 years ago, we were one of the first retailers to do that. Now it's almost become the norm. Yeah. So our challenge is how we almost move that on, because when everyone starts doing that, the expectation almost ratchets up a notch or two.
Yeah. Do you find there's a kind of extended community amongst your customers? So, again, I'm specific to Baby World. I think I did the NCT route, and some of my best friends today to those people, because we were in the same life stage at the same time, with the same emotions, the same fears, the same questions, etc., etc. And do you find you have the kind of Huggle community, which actually does extend beyond the store, and you know, really good friendships being built?
Absolutely. You know, for me, it was one of the nicest parts of the business was, you know, when one of the first parents came up to us when their child was 3 or 4 years old and told us that actually some of the best friends they've met at classes here at the store. So that's, you know, for us, that's a wonderful part of the business. Yeah. You know, we're very, very fortunate that we have a very, very supportive local community. Yeah. But obviously, to grow the business, you need to sometimes look a little bit further afield, and you know, with that comes challenges, because you can't always replicate that local feeling, that community feel when you're selling to someone that might live in Sheffield or in Birmingham.
Have you looked at that? Have you sort of thought, how can we do the community building online? I mean, there's traditional things like forums and stuff, which they're very hard to get off the ground, but when they do, they can work really well. And again, Mumsnet's the obvious one. It's a huge, powerful force. Have you considered what you can do as Huggle to almost sort of replicate what you're doing here in London online?
We have, and being very honest, it's very difficult to do that. You can do that with the retail side of things, with live chat, or you know, the next step from live chat now is live video chat. Yep. But to do that with a class, or to do that when people are making friendships, or seeing their child sing and dance at a class, or learn a language, it's very, very difficult. Yeah. So, you know, being very honest, it's something we've looked at, but not necessarily something that we're going to chase for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I think technology is an enabler, and you can have certainly a kind of virtual salesperson that can work really well, albeit at a cost, at a resource. You know, where is that person? Are they off the shop floor? Are they sitting in front of a bank of webcams? It's never as straightforward as people like to think, but it is doable. But I think it's the customer to customer relationship which is clearly kind of harder to do online. I don't know if you've seen any kind of futuristic tech that you kind of thinking, "What this is? This is exciting."
We see an awful lot of new product that's offered. Some of it's fantastic. There was a recent example. There was an Israeli tech company that we spoke to that offered artificial intelligence suggestions to customers that might be looking at certain products. So if you chose a cot that looked a certain way and had a certain feel to it, it was automatically able to make suggestions based on what you clicked on. So very, very clever.
Yeah.
You could also take a picture and upload it. So it was almost a Shazam type thing for retailers.
Fun, yeah.
The challenge again comes back to cost, because the cost for a business our size is almost prohibitive.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's a big investment.
Yeah, okay. In terms of, I'm sure your customers here in store, they become your brand ambassadors, and they help spread the word within the local community. Slightly tongue-in-cheek question: what's your view on mommy bloggers and influencers within your space? And so obviously online marketing, so engaging with people who might have a blog or claim to be influencers. Do you have a lot of experience in that? And what's your kind of view on that?
I think there are some pros and cons to working with so-called mummy bloggers.
Yeah.
We don't currently. We have done over the years. We work with different bloggers and influencers. Yeah. Obviously, the benefits are that it gives you exposure to a wider audience, that particularly when you're growing the business is a great opportunity. Yeah. The downside to it is it has become very commercialized.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people are becoming a lot more aware of that.
Agree. And lots of
the trust.
The trust thing. And when you review a buggy, and lo and behold, it's amazing, but they'll only ever feature stuff if you give it them for free. I mean, we obviously as an agency, we deal with influencers quite a lot, and some are brilliant. They're very, very accomplished and good publishers. They publish really good content for their audience, but a lot either just want payment outright. And sometimes if they have the audience and the quality is there, that's a commercial decision. But increasingly, we're seeing so many more now with an assumption that they should be given the world with really little substance, and all their reviews are positive and glowing. And I think as consumers, I think we're a lot better at kind of cutting through the noise and thinking, we know it's been a sort of motivated thing. And I think that the ability to be it's old-fashioned journalism, really. Accurately finding pros and cons is a much better sort of endorsement, I think. And I think those bloggers are harder to find. They're kind of fewer of them, I think.
For us, particularly in the market that we're in, the sector that we're in, so many people have children at the same time as their friends or family, or they might have that infrastructure, those people to go to ask their opinion. So I think a lot of our customers are able to filter that information and are able to balance that off against some good old-fashioned advice, along with that burgeoning industry, that influencer industry, which is huge. The value of it at the moment is phenomenal.
The whole kind of social media machine must work very well for you, because as you say, you've got pockets of people in that life stage, and they can share positive experiences and share their advice, and that's why I think online works so well. When it's that kind of, I understand your pain, and if you can do a good job of giving them help and advice and just assistance in the way you would do in store, and then that obviously kind of works really well.
I think really interesting parts for us, given that we've spent so much time and effort trying to build a retail business that gives customers an experience, is looking at where that online experience moves to next. Particularly, social media is becoming so important from a transactional point of view, and it really is breaking down barriers for people shopping and making that process so much quicker.
So buying on Instagram, that's potentially huge. Although, famous Fcommerce feels like it's on the back burner a little bit in many ways, and there's a lot of stuff which is overhyped, and I think you can see brands like Nike coming off Amazon, for example. I think there's some interesting examples where retailers they're actually pulling back and say, I want to own that customer journey. I want to own that experience and make sure that we, not from a sort of megalomaniacal way, but it's consistency and sort of quality, which is hard to do when you're spread too thin, I think.
I think that Nike's a really interesting example, because for a lot of retailers, they're struggling with the number of their suppliers or brands that are actually selling direct to the consumer at
Yes.
the moment. And Nike have obviously it's been quite well documented that
Yeah.
they've pulled some of the agreements they
party,
had with not just Amazon, but with some of the
quite a few,
retailers they work with. So it's how we as a retailer change and work with some of our brands, like, for example, Cybex here, to actually showcase their products in a way that they feel comfortable with, but at the same time, don't give over space in store, which is expensive, to brands that actually are focusing on selling direct to consumer rather than actually focusing on selling through you.
Retail kind of,
exactly.
And that's an interesting thing as well. The kind of brands. I mean, you've got some really kind of really lovely sort of European brands. Do you find? I mean, how much of your decision in terms of your buying, and obviously great history of buying, is influenced by a kind of growing appreciation of sort of business ethics, primarily kind of environmental considerations, for example? Is that part of your
absolutely
buying? So you'll select brands on the basis of their stance.
Absolutely. So for us, it's always been it's been a really important part of what we do here, and we've always chosen brands that either were contemporary or modern, but more importantly were sustainably sourced or environmentally friendly. So we work with a number of Scandinavian brands that only source their wood from sustainable forests, or they might use varnishes or lacquers that are water based rather than chemical based.
Is that you being good, or is it a demand from your clients, or
I think it's both?
Yeah,
I think it's
both.
both.
It's a sort of personal ambition.
I think
and
it's both.
Supported. And lastly, we always like to finish on a kind of glimpse of the future. I mean, you can mention a few technical things. So we're at the start of a new decade. How do you see retail, sort of both online and offline, panning out over the rest of the roaring 20s?
I wish I had the crystal ball, but there are some things that we do know, and the speed of change has been phenomenal. Everyone's talked about online and offline merging, so omnichannel's becoming a lot more important. Technology, we've touched on artificial intelligence. I think that's going to be a big game changer for a lot of retailers, but also in terms of the way our customers shop, and particularly the growth of not just millennials but the next generation X, Y, and Z, if you want to call it because a lot of them are shopping in a very different way. And they might not necessarily have the same disposable income as their parents or grandparents, or they might not necessarily be able to get on the property ladder as quickly. But that isn't just the primary consideration for them. They are. You touched on sustainability and environmentally friendly products. That's becoming
complex needs.
Absolutely, it's becoming a much more important part of how they shop, and retailers like ourselves need to ensure that we're addressing that, and also ensuring that we're giving them that experience that they need in store, because otherwise, they won't shop with you, and that's an important part. It is. It is, unfortunately.
Cool, Jason. Really enjoy that. Thanks a lot. I know you need to go.
Thank you.
Somewhat away.
Yes. Thank you. Very nice talking to you.
Pleasure. No, thank you for watching that. As always, we are always happy to hear from you if you'd like to be involved in a future Digital Brew. But in the meantime, if you have any baby requirements, huggle.co.uk or instore is the place to go. Thank you.